And back when I was in college, there was a trend that everything was on social media. Everything was hashtag blessed. Some of you may remember this. It was everything. Everything, you had, someone got engaged, which was all the time at a Christian college, hashtag blessed. Someone bought a new house, it was hashtag blessed. Someone got a promotion at work, it was hashtag blessed. Someone got the front row parking spot at Target on a busy day, hashtag blessed. And you know how that feels. This is like the favor of God on your life. Free dessert at the restaurant after they mess up your order, hashtag blessed. I mean, like there was all of this, and it felt like everything and everyone was blessed. I don't know about you, but when I start to see that, and I get inundated as I'm scrolling, it's like, oh, they're blessed. Oh, they're blessed. Oh, they're blessed. Oh, they're blessed. Can I be honest? Can I be vulnerable a little bit? I can get a little jealous. I'm like, where's my blessing? Where's I want a hashtag blessed. Like I want to do that. And I put my phone down and I look across the room and I see a blemish where my kid ran into a wall and knocked the paint off that we haven't fixed for 5 years. And I look over here and there's a toy that they broke because they threw it. I don't know. They're kids, like they do that. And then I see, like, you know, you just look every which way and you start to think, man, how do I get to where I can hashtag blessed? But here's what's interesting. Every one of us have a picture in our minds, our picture in our brains of what the good life looks like, what the blessed life looks like. And if I handed every single person a sheet of paper today and I asked you, what would your life look like before you finally say, this is the good life? What would you write? Would you write financial security? Would you write healthy kids? Would you write a great marriage? Would you write freedom from anxiety? Would you write a job you love? Would you write a boss you don't despise? Would you write good health, retirement, and on and on and on? And here's the deal. We all have different answers of what we view as the good life, is what we view as blessed. But we all have our own definition. And here's why that matters, because whatever you believe the good life is, you also probably believe those are the people that God has blessed. Which means, if we would have asked the average people in Jesus' day, who do you think God has blessed? They too would have had a list just like you and just like I do. The successful, the respected, those with power, those with authority, the wealthy, the people who seem to have it all together. And honestly, if we're being real, I don't think we've changed that much. We still have lists of who we think is blessed and who we think is not. And deep down, many of us still assume God's kingdom is for people who've finally gotten their lives together. Maybe you've even thought to yourselves, once I can go to God once I beat this addiction. Or I'll be blessed once I fix my marriage. Or I'll be blessed once I figure these kids out. I'll be blessed once I stop struggling. And maybe I'll be blessed once I become the person I should be. Then maybe I'll really belong and I'll really be blessed. We hop into Matthew chapter 5. Where Jesus ascends a mountaintop and sits down. The very first words out of his mouth seem to completely shatter the lists that we have written down, that we have pieced together in our brains, that our societies and structures have assumed. Jesus doesn't say what we'd think he would say. He says, blessed, in Matthew chapter 5, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Before we look at who Jesus calls blessed, we need to understand what he means by the word. When we hear blessed, we often think of a feeling, happy, lucky, like joy, feel good, whatever, fortunate. But Jesus, he's doing something deeper here. He's pressing in and he's making a declaration saying, this is truly the flourishing life. This is the life that God calls good. So if you wanted to, you could change that a little bit, and it's this is the life that God calls good, those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This is truly a flourishing life. Those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Which means the Beatitudes are not commands, they're announcements. Jesus isn't saying, become this so God will bless you. He's saying these people are flourishing in God's reign. And that's where the surprise begins, because nobody expected these to be the very first people mentioned on Jesus' list, the poor in spirit. I find it exhausting trying to convince people that my life is better than it actually is. I find it exhausting trying to put on a face or a facade. Isn't it overwhelming to sometimes try to measure up to other people's view of who you should and shouldn't be? I have found that it is. In fact, I've long ago, and if this happens, please just don't. When people ask me, how are you? I've stopped answering with a just casual answer, because I don't want to be known as the person that has the casual interaction. When you say, how are you? And I say good, and then we peace out and we never see each other again. If you're going to ask me how am I, get ready, friend. I got you. You're going to hear it all. If it's a good day, I'm going to tell you. If I found a buffet that I love, you're going to hear about it. If I found the new Mexican restaurant, you're going to learn about it. If my kids did something fun and got a haircut for the first time, like I took my son out to get a haircut at a real place and not my bathroom for the first time in his life yesterday, you're going to hear about it. You're going to see pictures. If it's the worst day of my life, get ready, friend. You just became my counselor. So don't ask me how I'm doing unless you got time, okay? Because I don't want to put on a face. I don't want to put on a facade. I want to be a whole, integral individual who's 100% me all of the time. And this is what Jesus calls flourishing. It's not putting out a front. It's the poor in spirit, those who have nothing to offer. And if you were hearing Jesus for the first time, you probably would have leaned over to somebody. Blessed are the... Did he say the poor in spirit? I think he must have misspoke. Didn't he mean rich? Blessed are the rich. He probably meant to say blessed are those who have a lot. Blessed are those who have everything figured out. Blessed are those who are doing well. Are you sure you heard him correctly? Blessed are the poor in spirit. Notice he doesn't say the good life belongs to the spiritually impressive. Quite the opposite. The poor in spirit are people who know they have nothing to offer God in the first place. Spiritually bankrupt, empty-handed, unable to save themselves and unable to impress God, unable to earn their way in. And here's the irony. Those are the only people who can truly receive grace. Grace can only fill empty hands. Grace can only fill empty hands. Now imagine the people who would have been listening. Jesus is up on this mountain. He's starting into this speech. The people have gathered around. They've heard of his deeds. They've seen the wonders. They've started to hear of his teachings. They've heard him say, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near. And the people that begin to gather around, they're fishermen, they're laborers, they're widows, the sick, the overlooked, the lepers, people carrying failures, people who had spent their lives being told they weren't enough. Jesus looks at those people and gives them a promise that no one expected. He says, the kingdom belongs to you. The kingdom belongs to you. And it's already seen in Jesus' ministry as he's interacting with those who no one would interact with. He's healing those who everyone else would stay away from. As people would cry unclean because they have a leprous disease, Jesus would not shy away from it. Rather, he would go towards them. He would spend time with the tax collectors. He would spend time with the prostitutes. He would spend time with who everybody else in society would shun. Jesus would run towards them while everyone else was running away from them. And so when he says these words, it's not in a vacuum. It's something that is backed up by his actions already. He says, yours is the kingdom. Ooh. The kingdom belongs to people just like you. Not after you clean yourself up. Not after you become impressive. Not after you get your ducks in a row or fix everything. Not after you shine your shoes and put on a fresh face and you get ready for the day. No. I'm talking the kingdom belongs to you when you wake up with your stank breath and you rub the sleepy out of your eyes and your hair's all frazzled because you don't have a silk pillow. The kingdom belongs to you. Poor in spirit, destitute of soul. The kingdom belongs to you. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Verse 4, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Many of us spend enormous energy pretending we're okay. And Jesus never asks us to pretend. He gives us permission to grieve. Every person in this room knows what that feels like. Maybe it was standing beside a bedside as someone was breathing their last. Maybe it was sitting at a funeral or signing divorce papers, losing a dream you thought would happen, losing your job, your career, your future, that relationship. We've all found moments where we are truly mourning. Mourning is what happens when we collide with the reality that the world isn't the way it should be. And that's who Jesus is speaking to and Jesus is speaking about. Again, think about the audience. Roman occupation, heavy taxation, disease, poverty. Funerals were often in this time period. Lifespan was short. And the quality of life was lackluster. And Jesus, he's speaking to those individuals. He doesn't tell them, get over it. He doesn't tell them, move on. He doesn't tell them, hey, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, friend. He doesn't say, hey, it's going to be okay, buddy. He doesn't say, hey, don't just ignore it. Act like it's not there. Hey, you got to speak differently about your life because that's not reality. This over here is reality. If you name it, claim it. If you blab it, grab it. No. He doesn't say any of that. Instead, he says, blessed are those who mourn. If the good life is for those who mourn, it means you cannot rush past the mourning. If the good life, the flourishing life, the blessed life is for those who grieve, it means you cannot ignore the difficulty. Then he promises comfort. Notice he didn't immediately promise escape from the pain or from the grief, but he does promise full restoration. I need you to hear this. Before he promises comfort, he invites people to sit in their pain. You see, what we tend to do, we tend to either ignore the hurt, the difficulty, the thing that we should mourn over, or we indulge in it. It becomes our identity. We ignore it or we identify by it. And Jesus doesn't say do either. He just says, blessed are those who mourn. We either rush the grieving or we remain in it. But Jesus doesn't say to do either of those. He says, blessed are those who mourn. The mourners, they aren't foolish. They're actually seeing reality clearly. They're simply refusing to pretend everything is okay. Jesus isn't calling you to fake it. If you're going through a hard time, I need you to hear Jesus' words, you're blessed. For you will be comforted. For you will be comforted. Jesus says, in not so many words, God sees you, God knows, and comfort is coming. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Then he says in verse 5, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Now, this one would have sounded absurd, friends. You can imagine the eye rolls going through the crowds. The meek, they will inherit the earth? Jesus, what are you talking about? This isn't how things work. Rome wasn't ruled by the meek. Rome was ruled by force. Rome was ruled by power. Rome was ruled by military might. The strong took what they wanted and made no apologies for it. This was the day. This was the kingdom. This was how it worked. This was how it manifested. And honestly, not much has changed. Still to this day, those who have power, might, strength, those who have money, means, those who have the ability and influence, they seem to rule, don't they? They seem to be the ones that are driving the ship of our societies. And Jesus doesn't look at them and say they're blessed. He looks at those who are not the ones in power. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. When we hear meek, we often think timid, passive, or weak, but that's not the picture Jesus is painting. Jesus, listen, he's echoing Psalm 37 where it says, the meek shall inherit the land. In that psalm, the meek aren't weak people. They're the people that get overlooked. They're the people that get pushed aside. They're the people who seem to be losing. They're the people watching others succeed through greed, through power, and through corruption while they themselves are remaining faithful. The people wondering, does faithfulness even really matter anymore? Have you ever felt that way? Like all of society around you is pushing and striving and working to get ahead. Like everyone seems to be running at breakneck speeds. Oh, every yellow light is just speed up as fast as you can to get to the next thing. That every signal in our lives that would say slow down, breathe, refresh, recuperate, it really is in our society signaling everybody just speed up, work harder, do more, try, work, spin deals, and just make it happen because you've got to. Otherwise, you will die and suffer and have nothing. Isn't that kind of how our society seems to work? That's the world of Psalm 37. That's the world Jesus is speaking into. The meek are people who don't have any leverage. The meek are people who don't have status. They don't have influence. They don't have power. They're the people that society tends to ignore. And Jesus looks directly at them and he says, you are the flourishing ones. Not because being overlooked is enjoyable. No. Not because being marginalized is inherently holy. It's not that. It's not that if we can all just give all our stuff away and relinquish all power and just have no position in society, then you're blessed. That's not what Jesus is saying. Being meek in and of itself isn't inherently holy, but they will inherit the earth, Jesus says. Not because they seized it, not because they took control, not because they grabbed for it. No. But Jesus says God's future belongs to them. You see, every kingdom over the course of all of society and all of history, every kingdom has a list of winners. Every kingdom has a list of winners. Rome had a list of winners, and our kingdom has a list of winners. And Jesus, what we see him doing here is he's rewriting the list, isn't he? And that's why the Sermon on the Mount is quite disruptive if actually you take time to sit in it. Because we still have a list of winners. And rarely does it look like what Jesus is saying. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. In verse 6, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. For they will be filled. By the time Jesus gets here, the crowd has heard something incredible. Jesus has already said, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. And if we understand the world Jesus is speaking to, there's a thread connecting all of these. These are people who recognize something. They recognize that the world is not right. And Jesus says, you're blessed. You're actually the flourishing ones. The poor in spirit, they know, I cannot fix myself. I need someone greater than me to do that. Those who mourn know something's broken. For this deep well of sadness and of despair is not how we were supposed to function. And the meek know. The people who are overlooked and pushed aside, they matter to God. Though they may not seem to matter in society, they matter to God. And every single one of these individuals, they recognize there's something not right, there's something not right, there's something not right. And Jesus then says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are those who cannot look at a broken world and just be okay with it. Blessed are those who cannot look at hardships and difficulties and the world as is and just shrug their shoulders and move on. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Have you ever been so thirsty that water was the only thing you could think about? Oh, it's going to be in the low 90s this week. Some of you are going to get heat advisories on your phone. Yeah. And they're going to tell you, the news will tell you, hey, make sure you're drinking enough water. Check on your neighbors. Hey, knock on their doors. Ask them if they need anything. Be a good neighbor this week. I don't know if you know, if you've been around here long enough. I'm originally from Texas. And what we call hot here is winter in Texas. It's like 100 to 105 for 3 months out of the year. And I don't think they ever get heat advisories. It's just the way things are. But I remember I was a really bad football player. The only thing that kept me on a team was that I knew the plays where most of our team members didn't. And I didn't like it because practices are horrible, yeah? And like in Texas, we practice outside. Like I remember moving up here and I heard that sports teams had to cancel like once it got too hot, their practices and stuff. And if we did that in Texas, we would have never practiced. So we would practice and we'd have these giant things of water, and they had just like these water hose type things, like multiple coming off of them, and we had all over the football field. And I remember you're running these drills and you're running and you're sweating and you're thirsty and you didn't eat because like the food at the lunch table that day, like it's not real. And you'd rather not eat it than get whatever disease comes with it. And of course, you drank 3 or 4 sodas during the school day, and so you're going to be dehydrated come time for practice. So I remember being dog tired, and I was a little chubby kid. So I was carrying a little extra weight around, getting a little extra tired. There's just a lot going on. And I remember being out there, and there were times where I just hoping that the coach would call for a water break. And the moment he did, I've never ran faster, friends. I do think that if they wanted me to perform at my absolute best, just put a water jug at the other end of the field, I would have got there quicker than anybody. I would sprint. I'd run over to that thing. I'd grab the hose. I'd push people out the way. I'd get out of here, grab it, and I'd just go I could sit there for the rest of the day with that thing. I remember several years ago now, I ran a trail marathon, which is the dumbest idea anyone's ever concocted. Don't do it. It's not a smart thing. I don't know why we did it. It was a mistake, actually. It was supposed to be a normal marathon, but then someone signed up for the trail marathon that was in our group, and so we all had to sign up for it. Otherwise, we left them to run it by themselves, and we were too good of friends to leave them to run it by themselves, so we signed up for it. It was a bad mistake, and we shouldn't have done it. Anyways, we did it. I'm here. I'm alive. I just remember running between these checkpoints, which were so far away, in the middle of a field on the backside of these hills, and I was thinking, am I ever going to get water? It's that type of thirst that this is being conveyed. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst. It's that moment where your mouth is dry, your head hurts, nothing else matters, and that's the image Jesus chooses. Not blessed are those who kind of like righteousness. Blessed are those who, oh man, yeah, righteousness is pretty cool. It's not like people do dating nowadays where it's like, oh, we're in a situationship or we're talking. No. It's like full committed, needing this. It's all the way invested in, all the way committed to, all the way tuned in. I am desperate. I need this. There's nothing else. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Jesus, he chooses the strongest human desires. He's describing a deep ache, a holy dissatisfaction, a refusal to accept that things are going to always be this way or stay the way they currently are. This would have landed deeply with Jesus' audience, because they knew what it felt like to live in a world that wasn't right. You do too, don't you? You know what it's like to live in a world that, man, something's broken. Something's missing. Something's not right. And even though good things can happen, and maybe my life isn't that too difficult, I look around our world and I look around the corner and I just see, man, this isn't what life is supposed to be. And things, stuff happens and you end up in a situation and it just gets to this point where you hear this and you're like, yeah, something is broken. Something's not right. These people Jesus was speaking to, they were living under Rome. They watched powerful people abuse power. They watched the wealthy prosper while ordinary people suffered and struggled. And they knew what it was like to get overlooked. They knew what it was like to pray, God, when will you make things right? And Jesus says, blessed are people that ask that question. Blessed are people that ask that question. Those people are flourishing. When we look at broken relationships, bitterness, division, injustice, or our own sin, Jesus is calling us to have a dissatisfaction with that, to not be okay with that status, to not just, that's the way things are. Just is what it is. Yeah. But like there's people that don't have stuff it's the world. How it goes. Yeah, but you don't get it. I have 3 meals and dessert and all that I need, and there's people around the corner that don't have but a few dollars to their name. Yeah, that's how things go. You see, Jesus, he's pushing back against the idea to just be okay with that. He's saying, no. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst. Hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. The people who are blessed are the ones who still believe things can be different. The ones who still hunger, the ones who still thirst, the ones who still say, God, make this right. The kingdom of God belongs to those people who refuse to make peace with the world that God never intended to stay broken. And I don't want to be okay with the brokenness of our world. I want my heart to break for the things that it's always broken for. I don't want to become calloused and just overlook things. I don't want to walk past people that are in need and just be okay because that's how it is. No. I didn't plan on spending this much time at this point, but God's kingdom and the people of it aren't okay with brokenness. Aren't okay with the world that is in shambles. Aren't okay with the world where people suffer while others prosper. Jesus says, if you have that holy discontent, if you have that dissonance that is just constantly, that cacophony that is always in your brain, keeping you from, I just can't settle down. Hey, you're blessed. Hey, you're going to be filled. And ultimately, what we see from these few verses is this: the kingdom belongs to people who know they need a king. The kingdom belongs to people who know they need a king. Maybe that's why Jesus begins here. Before he tells us how to pray, before he tells us to love our enemies, before he tells us not to worry, before he tells us to do anything, he tells us who belongs in the kingdom. It's the empty. It's the grieving. It's the overlooked. It's the hungry. Maybe you spent your entire life believing Christianity was only for people who had it all together. Maybe you believe that God only welcomes the spiritually impressive, but Jesus begins his sermon by saying exactly the opposite. The kingdom isn't built for people who think they have everything. It's built for people who know they don't. Which means if you've ever thought, I'm too broken, I fell too much, I don't belong, Jesus' very first words are, come in. The door is open because the kingdom belongs to people who know they need a king. Stop building your life on your own adequacy, your own control, your own significance, or your own solutions. Bring your need, bring your grief, bring your lowliness, bring your longing to the king. Those aren't disqualifications from his kingdom. That's the very posture of people who can receive it. So will you bring all that to Jesus today? Will you bring your disgruntledness at society and the structures? Will you bring your brokenness and your lowliness? Will you bring your hurt? Will you bring your pain? Will you bring your grief? Will you bring that which has just been eating away your soul? Will you bring that before God? Because it's there. It's in that moment where you are blessed, where you are flourishing, where you are truly living the good life. It's the inversion we see that Jesus, in the New Testament, when it says that in our weakness, his strength is made perfect. It's the same inversion that when we are weak, he is strong. When we are broken, we can truly experience and receive his wholeness. When we bring our meekness, when we bring our mourning, when we bring our grief, that's where the hope of a new tomorrow truly begins, because we're not bottling it up. We're not remaining in it. We are not resisting it. We are not ignoring it or identifying by it. Rather, we submit it to the all-powerful King. And in his kingdom, that's where flourishing begins, because I can't do it, but I know he can. I don't have the power to control it, but I know he's got good plans. I don't have the power. I don't have the authority. I can't do it on my own, but I bring my empty hands. I bring my broken heart and I lay it before the King and I say, here I am. And it's in that moment that he calls you blessed. Woo! I know, friends, I know. This is not one of those, here's 3 points, now go and live your life. Hey, if you'll just help old ladies across the street and fill people's tanks up with gas and pay for somebody's meal, you're blessed. I know it would have been easier, right? But Jesus often didn't teach the way we think things should be taught. Oftentimes the applications of what Jesus is teaching, it's much deeper than any specific application. I could sit up here and I could speak to specific things in lives, but we'd be here for the next 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, just trying to get through all the applications of this message, and we would still be scratching the surface of what God is wanting to do in and through your life as you begin to live the good life, the flourishing life, the blessed life that he has called you to live. So I invite you, as I believe Jesus was inviting his hearers and his listeners, I invite you on the journey of the Sermon on the Mount, where we learn what it is to live in the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, and we see what this world has to offer. And in contrast, what his kingdom is revealing. The door is open to his kingdom. The invitation is there. The question is, would you come in? Would you bow your heads with me today?